Welcome.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll swap out.
You'll keep me in line with the
You got it.
call the June 1st, 2022 Board of Zoning Adjustment meeting to order. We have a roll call.
Drew Goodner, Frost Rollins,
Here.
Amy Sorrells, Kim White,
Here.
Marty Heffron,
Here.
Letitia Smith,
Here.
Mary Boyd.
Here.
Okay, and the approval of minutes. Did everybody have a chance to look at the April 6th minutes? Do we have a motion?
Yes, I will make a motion to approve.
Second.
Frost Rollins,
Yes.
Kim White,
Yes.
Marty Heffron,
Yes.
Letitia Smith,
Yes.
Mary Boyd.
Yes.
Have a few statements to read before we get started. Any persons aggrieved by any decision of the board may within 15 days after such decision appeal to the circuit court having jurisdiction according to section 908.02 of the zoning ordinance of the city of Auburn, Alabama. The board consists of 5 regular members and 2 supernumeraries. The supernumeraries participate in all discussions but only vote when necessary to assure 4 voting members and have a board consisting of 5 members when possible. All decisions are made with a roll call vote, and a concurring vote of 4 members is required to approve an application for a variance. So, we had mentioned moving the July meeting because of the 4th of July holiday, and I thought we should do that since we're going to be continuing one and we need to have the date certain, right?
Yeah, it is something we've been talking about. If you don't mind, we could bring it up under Chairman Communication at the end of the meeting. Would that be okay?
That's fine. I was just worried if we moved, like number 4 has been requested to be postponed, and we have to say we're postponing it to date, right? So I didn't know if it would matter what order we did that in.
Sure. Let's see. So the date we're talking about changing, was it July's date, right?
It was the 6th. We talked about maybe the 13th.
The 13th?
Are y'all okay with
That's
that
right. I
change?
did write it down here, 6th to the 13th. That's July. So, yeah, it's it's an excellent point. So whatever direction you want to go on that, that's fine. You can take things out of order if you'd like to. That's fine.
I don't know
That's not a
what
problem.
order is best.
I hadn't connected the dots, so sorry about that.
So our July meeting is scheduled for July 6th. In the past, we have moved that out a week because so many people are traveling for the 4th. Does anyone have a problem with moving the meeting to July 13th instead? Are y'all going to be available that day?
Yes.
Do we need to make that a motion, or we could just discuss it?
There's probably 50 ways to do this, right? So
Okay.
what I think would be most appropriate is you already have sort of a recognition that there's support for changing it. So I think it's perfectly fine to wait until the end of the meeting, do it under chairman's comments. When you get to the 4th request, which is a postponement for a month, I would just say, move to postpone it to the,
To the sixth.
the meeting that you'll have in July.
Okay.
Okay.
And if you want to say that would be July 13th, I think that's fine, because you're going to, I think, change it to that date.
Okay, we'll start with new business.
Good afternoon. All right, your first item on the agenda this evening is a variance request to section 51103G, which is use limitations on accessory structures. And the requested variance is to allow a shed or an accessory structure to be placed approximately 30 feet in front of the home when it is required that an accessory structure not be less than 10 feet behind the front plane of the home. The property is located at 517 Cross Creek Road in the Willow Creek subdivision. It's zoned NC 26. The property is here, fronting the street. The proposed location for the shed is in the northeast corner of the property. And let me get to, here's a diagram of where it is proposed to go. The property does have unique circumstances and hardship. The creek, not the creek, the pond or lake of Willow Creek is to the west of the property. In this area here, this is the home here, I believe, right there. And this is the street. And here is a street view of the property, and you can see the driveway coming off of Cross Creek here, and the house is there. The driveway, bear with me. The driveway comes off of Cross Creek and goes around the front of the home to the side of the house. And there is a parking pad in this area here. And it is that approximate location where the structure is proposed to be placed, right here. And as I mentioned, they do have unique circumstances, and hardship. Topography is a big factor on the property. It slopes, I think I said approximately 24 feet from the street down to the pond, which is right in this area here. And the applicant has also stated that there are underground springs and streams present on the property. Staff was unable to verify that, but the applicant does say that they are present. I received no correspondence from any of the neighboring properties, and staff does recommend approval of the variance. And should you guys grant the variance, we do have 2 conditions to go along with the request. One is that the accessory structure not be expanded to add additional floor area, and that the location be placed as shown on the exhibit. And there are 2 additional that are not included in the staff report. And one would be to kind of the materials and or the paint of the structure be complementary to the home and be neutral in color so that it blends in with the surroundings and is not very noticeable from the street. And the last condition would be not to remove that existing vegetation that would serve as a screen from the street. The applicants are present this afternoon, so if you have any questions that I may not be able to answer, they are here.
You want to have questions for Katie?
So with the recommendation, you're proposing that we had 4 conditions as opposed to the 2 that's listed with
That's correct.
materials being the same color and that vegetation is not removed.
Correct.
Okay. Perfect, thank you.
So I was out there today.
Okay.
Did you guys, have you talked to the neighbor across the street? So they're okay with you guys putting the shed in there?
We talked with the neighbors on either side of us.
Because the people across the street, if I was living in that house, that's where I would see it. So I liked your guys' conditions. The only other thing I would think is if you guys could maybe put some type of shrubbery or something that's on the side that's facing the road, so it's kind of more masked. Because it's a great spot for a shed. I mean, that's the most ideal spot for it's level. It's, you have access, all that kind of stuff. But that's what I would, if I was the guy across the street, that's what I would appreciate that if someone did that for me.
Some shrubbery next to the shed? Or
Yeah, just like on the
opposite?
side that faces the street, because the door will
Yeah.
face probably the house, right? The access door.
Yep,
And then the side of the shed will face the street.
Yes.
So if that was a little masked with some type of,
yeah,
foliage of some sort. Because the stuff out front here, it looks thick in this picture, but when you're really there, it's not as thick as this looks.
Yeah.
It's a little thinner. But it's not bad, though.
maybe some native azaleas.
Yeah, something that's nice and makes it look decorative or sort of masks it a little bit or something like that. That'd be nice.
Sure.
Good.
So, are you Brian Connolly?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so the
Or-
applicant is
or-
here. Would you like to comment any further?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I do have a question, and it's not really a question, but on this screen that I'm looking at, can you point, maybe I need your clicker, Katie, can point me to where in this view the shed will be?
Come down in that area right there.
In that area, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Just to sign in before you leave on the pad of paper there, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
We'll open this to public hearing. If anyone would like to speak for or against the request for a variance, please come forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. We'll open to board discussion.
Well, I have no issues with the 4 conditions that are noted and with the fact that it is recommended by the team.
Also see that this is in keeping with the purpose of the ordinance, being that it's so far from the road and also screened by trees.
I agree with everything, and I agree with what Marty said. Looks a little less dense when you're driving by, and so I would say that we condition on not just not keeping, but maintaining vegetation. I mean, like if a tornado comes through and wipes out all those trees, then just to make sure you meet the other conditions that you maintain it.
Would you be okay?
Maintain some vegetation.
Yeah, would you be okay with that condition? Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I will make a motion to approve BZ 2022-006, a variance to allow an accessory structure to be placed approximately 30 feet in front of the front building line when it is required to be no closer than 10 feet to the rear of the front building line, with the conditions that the accessory structure shall not be expanded to include additional floor area, that the location of the structure be placed as shown in the exhibit included in the staff report, that the material and paint be complementary to that of the home and neutral in color as to blend in with the vegetation, and that you maintain the vegetation that screens the shed from the road.
Second.
Ross Rollins. Kim White.
Yes.
Marty Heffron.
Yes.
Letitia Smith.
Yes.
Mary Boyd.
Yes.
Thank you, your variance was approved.
Can I ask a question for clarification? I might have missed something. Were there just the 4 conditions, or was something added to require those shrubs that were talked about?
It's maintaining.
Maintenance.
Okay. And the shrubs that Marty mentioned? Okay, thank you.
All right. Good afternoon. Next up is going to be 2 variance requests for property at 238 Summerhill Road in the Corridor Redevelopment District East zoning district. The first variance is to increase the maximum allowed floor area ratio of 30% to allow a maximum FAR of approximately 39%. Side note, this actually request should be reduced to 38% after review. The 39 is not needed, just 38. So I'll just remind y'all of that at the end. The second request is for a variance to reduce the required minimum front setback of 25 feet to allow a minimum front setback of 20 feet. Here is an aerial of the property. It's going to show, let's see. Okay. The irregular shape of the lot, it's about just under 9,000 square feet and is next to a platted alley that's unimproved and not used for vehicular access. If this alley were vacated, it would add about 2,000 square feet to the subject property. Here is a prox map of the area. Oops, we had training on this and I still haven't gotten it. So zoom in a little. We've got CRD here, CRDE in the majority here, MDRD here. This lot is part of the Woodwind subdivision, which is the CRDE area. And in the subdivision, this lot is the smallest. The majority of, or all of the other lots, range between 15,000 and just under 19,000 square feet. So that is a unique circumstance for this property. Oops. Here's the site plan. And it's going to show that the applicant is proposing approximately a 3,400 square foot structure. The duplex is a permitted use in CRDE,
And the 30% FAR that they are allowed would allow 2,665 square feet. The variance of 8% would allow them an additional 712 square feet, which is what they need to construct the proposed plan. The front setback requirement is 25 feet, and they are requesting to reduce it to 20 feet. The majority of the homes in the area are developed as single family, which do allow a front setback of 20 feet. So staff believes that allowing this would be okay. It would also allow this parking here to be located a little bit behind the front plane of the building, and would allow this parking here. It's going to be a tight squeeze for this parking, but they've done a good job of getting it all on the site, and it will just allow a little bit more room to maneuver those vehicles. Based on the size of the lot, the irregular shape, staff does think that these are circumstances and hardships, and recommends approval of the variance of up to 8% to the maximum FAR, and a reduction of the front setback of 5 feet to allow a front setback of 20 feet. I've got some pictures here. This is just a Google Street View of the home. It has been demolished. Here's a picture looking from the backyard out onto the street. And I believe they are going to be keeping these large trees. This is looking from the south towards the law office on Glen. And here is going to show where that alley is that runs next to the property that is not improved. That's all.
Anyone have questions for Amber?
Yes, I have questions about alleys in general.
Okay.
So, who improves it if it's gonna be improved? Who decides whether it's gonna be improved? Allowed to use it?
This was platted back in originally 1947, and I'm not sure what they had intended at that time. The applicant did meet with planning and engineering services, and they were supportive of, what's the word I'm looking for? Vacating, yes, vacating the alley. It's really a months-long process, but they would be supportive of that.
And if they vacated the alley, then they would just have,
They would divide it to both of the property owners on either side.
so that would give them the ability to have additional ingress, egress, but it would also eliminate the ability of other,
It would not, no, the alley would just be taken off the plat, pretty much, and just would not exist if it was vacated.
okay, so everyone else that's on the alley toward the center of the block would not have access? to
No,
their-
the way the subdivision is, I don't have it in here. Let
You
me
go back to the
back
I
to
guess
slide
if the
that
lot
shows the
line comes
neighborhood.
all the way, I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
I think
Yeah.
if the city was to consider a vacation of that alley right-of-way, if you want to call it that, I think it would be a comprehensive look at the entire length of the alley. It wouldn't just be like a piece in the middle or a piece on the end, because then that would disrupt, the intent of the alley as it was originally planned. So, I mean, this is a conversation bigger than really what we're talking about here today, but obviously it's been there a while. No one has bothered to improve it, and more than likely, individual property owners aren't going to go out and put the money forward to improve the alley from one end to the other of that block. So
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to see it get improved at this point in time. I don't know there's any reason, rationale for that. So that would be a request that would have to come before the city. I think the city engineer and other people would have to take a look at that and have a comprehensive look at it. But otherwise, what you've mentioned is correct. It would be split between properties on both sides.
And are they gonna use are they taking advantage of that piece or not?
At this, for what
I mean,
use?
well, you mentioned that if they reabsorb that part, it's a horrible non-technical term, then that would increase their available lot size.
Right,
So, but they can't do that, it sounds like, until you take a comprehensive look at everything. Is that correct?
right, and it's officially
Yeah,
vacated.
they haven't requested that. So This request is based on just the existing situation that you have before you.
None, nope. All right. Sure. Mr. Lynn is present. If you want to, would you like to say anything? Would you like to speak?
I really can't hear a thing. I'm fixing to get some hearing aids, but, is there anything, any questions directed to me?
Do y'all have any questions of the applicant?
Okay, we'll say that the applicant was present but declined to speak. How about that? Okay, I'll open this to public hearing. If anyone would like to speak for or against the request for variance, please come forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and open the board discussion. Based on Amber's report and the funny lot shape, I think that is an unusual circumstance. And the alley is an added kind of strangeness there. Yeah.
Me either.
I saw that it does have a condition.
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. That construction is consistent with the plans submitted to the board.
I will make a motion to approve BZ 2022, number 7, variance to increase the maximum allowed floor area ratio of 0.3 to allow a maximum floor area ratio of approximately 0.38, with the condition that the construction be consistent with the development plan submitted to the board.
Ross Rollins. Kim White.
Yes.
Marty Heffron.
Yes.
Letitia Smith.
Yes.
Mary Boyd.
Yes.
Okay, and I'll make a motion to approve the second variance for BZ 2022-007, variance to reduce the required minimum front setback of 25 feet to allow a minimum front setback of 20 feet.
Ross Rollins. Kim White.
Yes.
Marty Heffron.
Yes.
Letitia Smith.
Yes.
Mary Boyd.
Yes.
Are we done?
Oh, your variance was approved. Yay.
Hello. This next variance is to allow gravel parking and driveway for a commercial office at 305 Warrior Court. The zoning ordinance requires parking spaces and driveway to be suitable, hard surface, permanent type of pavement. So this is a request to have gravel instead of that. The property is located right here. This is a unique property because there are two structures on it, if you saw in the staff report. There is the residential structure in the front, closest to Warrior Court on the east, and there is another residential duplex to the west. The applicants want to convert that front residential structure, the larger one, into a architect and landscape architect firm. And that would require 6 spaces, and that is why they are requesting this variance. This is zoned Corridor Redevelopment West, and so is most of the area around it. There is a mix of single-family, multiple unit development, offices, commercial, restaurant in that area. So there's a variety. Having a office and a residential property is permitted on that lot. This is the site plan that the applicant provided. They are required to have 6 spots, and all the parking is proposed to be behind the first residential structure, 4 right here, and then 2 parallel spots right here. And then part of this drive is concrete. In the staff report, it said that there's existing gravel. That was a mistake that maybe 15 years ago, there might have been gravel. When I went out there, not just Google Earth, it's dirt after that concrete ends. So the curb cut, though, is existing. The issue that we spoke to the applicant about is where the residents of the duplex are gonna park, and the applicant told us that there was parking behind the structure. I was not able to see that. It looks like it's there from Google Maps, Google Earth, but when I was there, there were people home, and I didn't want to go into their rear yard because they had their doors open. So I did not speak to them, but I did not want to go trespassing. This is 2 images of where the parking will be. This is not the structure to be converted. This is the duplex. So right here is where the 2 parallel spots would be, and then over here is where the 4 spots would be. And then this would need to be improved with the gravel as well, if approved. There was no correspondence received on this, and the staff didn't find any hardship or unique circumstances based on our definition of it, but in the staff report, you'll see where the applicant discussed several considerations for you to look at and discuss, and I believe the applicant is here. If this variance was not granted, it could still be used as an office, so it wouldn't eliminate any use of that structure. It could still be an office, it could still be residential, so not granting it would not eliminate anything. And then that is all I have. So the request doesn't meet all of our criteria, but the applicant is here to provide answers if you have them or justifications.
So what is the intent of this ordinance?
The intent, which is for commercial parking to not have gravel. It's difficult for handicap, which speaking of handicapped, 1 spot will have to be paved. It'll have to meet the size requirements, the door opening, van accessible requirements, markings, everything that the IBC would cover.
Okay.
So 1 spot will have to be accessible, but as far as bikes, wear and tear, maintenance, having a hard permanent surface is just preferred.
Will it cause any issues to like a fire truck getting back there?
I cannot answer that. That's a very good question. And we've talked about that because the width of the driveway is only 15 feet approximately. So we have talked about that. I don't know that they would need to get back behind there with the length of the hoses, but I cannot speak on that.
I think as long as the width is okay, then the surface, you know, a hard surface is okay. Don't quote me on that, I'm not a fire person. But I know that when we did work with the university and there was, you know, ingress and egress issues related to emergency vehicles, it's an issue if you have them going back and forth all the time. You know, then you want certainly like a certain thickness of concrete, but other than that, I think, just in this residential / office setting, I'm not aware of any.
I think it depends on when this is looked at in more detail, if there's a review after this, if you will, that typically an all-weather surface is something, the terminology that's used for sort of a fire truck access if it's not paved. Because if it does get wet, you know, you don't need this fire truck sinking down into places. We haven't talked to them specifically about this request at this time. You know, it's just basically a variance request. And, you know, depending on the length of hose that would be required to go back in there, usually they like to get their truck within the length of the hose, obviously, into all sides of a building. And I don't remember what that length of hose is that we have on our truck here, so.
I don't remember on the trucks here, no.
I will say this, that the slide that had the layout of parking on it, you know, does not have dimensions. In looking at that, you know, it's got sharp right angles for turns in the parking lot. You know that cars don't work that way. So I would say that this is subject to change based upon further review, because it's got to provide the right amount of backup space, and there's no dimensions on here that show, you know, typically the parking spaces are
parallel
9 by 18.
spots are 24 feet
We got that.
long, yeah.
But for instance, looking at the parking spaces there and then the backup space behind them, it's going to be a longer depth for the backup space than the actual parking space. And it looks like to be about the same, maybe it's not. But again, no dimensions on here, so we're not attesting to this being a bona fide plan that meets our codes, okay?
This is just to show us where these spots would be if permitted to use the gravel.
And just to confirm, you said that there's pavement up until like maybe where that first car is pictured?
No, hold on, right, so the curb cut and then maybe right to there,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
it. And then it breaks off, so there's gonna be some improvements that need to be done regardless. It's dirt and some of it is sinking and rutted out in places, so there's gonna be some work regardless of what's done.
Okay.
So I have a question that's a follow-up to something that Mr. Foote said. So how do we make a decision when you say further information may be required? How does that translate to the decision that needs to be made?
You know, to me, I think the decision is based on the pavement. You know, the city
Okay.
has a standard for pavement in this context. You know, if you're going to do something that is not a single-family home, then the requirement is that you pave your driveways and your parking and all of that. So you need to look at what's the justification for not paving it? You know, is there some hardship here that, you know, we just can't pave that because of what reason? And typically, it can't be a financial reason. So, you know, I look at this and I see a driveway that's appears to be narrower than a two-way driveway. So if you have somebody back in those 6 parking spaces and they need to come out, is there somebody else coming in and you can't pass one another? In other words, is it too narrow to do that? And it should, in my opinion, be a two-way driveway. You have the parallel spaces that were mentioned by Morgan. And, you know, so how do you get out of those parallel spaces? You know, typically, and again, this is Auburn, so it's not necessarily the same as every place I've ever worked, but single-family homes and low-intensity residential activities, sometimes you can back into a street. When you get into the context of offices and commercial and things of that nature, you know, it's typically designed in a manner where you pull in. You know, you go everywhere in town. You pull in, you can back up, and you approach the street in a forward motion. You know, and so out of those parallel spaces, do you back all the way back up the 50 feet, 60 feet, whatever it may be, to the road? Is somebody else coming back in? It's just an awkward arrangement. But that's not the request before you. It's not the design of this per se. I think there are design issues inherent in what I'm looking at.
I see.
But the question is just really a matter of surface. Is there justification to not pave it, and what's that justification?
Okay, got it. Thank you.
The fire stuff, if there's a fire issue, I think that could be handled at a later point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have questions?
I was just curious why why do you want to do gravel versus asphalt, other than cost?
Does the applicant want to speak? Oh, okay.
I was just waiting for the public hearing to be open, that's what I told her, okay.
Wait, so
Applicant.
what are we doing now?
Are you the applicant?
Yes, I'm,
Okay.
sorry, I'm not the applicant, but I'm the applicant's spouse, because he's out of town.
Okay.
So, the reason that it's tricky on this lot, trying to combine a residential and a commercial. And so for that reason, we were trying to make it still it's combining that residential commercial feel. And so we were trying to keep the gravel, because then it kind of allows the residential part that's in the back to not feel as commercial. And so that's kind of the reasoning behind that, is to allow it to feel more quaint and cottagey than just like, this
Bunch
is a
of asphalt.
residential office. I mean, this is a commercial office. And again, it's a small professional firm. There will be very few people in it, you know, other than the 2 employees or whatever. There'll be very few people in and out of that. And so we were trying to keep that feel of that corner of trying to, you know, combine on a lot, a commercial and a residential space.
Anyone have any other questions for the applicant?
It being like a landscape architecture office, are you planning to do like aesthetically pretty landscaping improvements to the property?
I don't know, because we're renting it, so that would be a conversation. So we're not actually the owners,
Okay, sorry.
we will be renting. So that would have to be a conversation between us and the actual owner.
Oh, do they need the owner's permission to get a variance?
We did get the owner's permission to do the
Okay.
variance. Yes, we had to
I
get
missed
his
that, sorry.
permission to request the variance, yes.
Yeah, I
That was
like,
part of the
did you
packet.
miss that too? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I was like,
yes.
you don't look like James Fulmer.
No, I'm not James Fuller. Yeah. Yeah, we did get his permission to request the variance, and he is in support of it.
Have you heard anything from the people living in the duplex?
I have not.
They didn't, we had a sign out front. We had a sign out front. They did not call, but when we send out the adjoining property owner letter, they would not have gotten one since they're the same property. So it would have to be on the landlord to have discussed that, or for them to have seen the sign and called us.
Right, because it's a rental property as well.
Okay, we'll have a public hearing in just a minute. Thanks. Okay. Does anyone else have questions for
I'll
the
be
applicant?
here if y'all have any other questions.
Okay, if you don't mind signing in, please.
I did, yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll open this to public hearing. If anyone wants to speak for or against the variance, please come forward. Will you please come to the podium lectern?
Hello. I was just generally here to get more information. Everything seems okay to me. Y'all have any questions?
What's your name and address?
Joey Catchert. Yeah, and I stay behind.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you saw the sign?
Yeah, and that's why I'm here, basically. Yeah.
Okay. Have you had any problems with the gravel parking?
No, not so much.
Okay, great. If you don't
Okay.
mind signing in, please.
Okay.
Anyone else for public hearing? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and open to board discussion. I'm wondering if there's any way to condition this to where if the use like is changed, where it's not an architecture firm that won't have a lot of people coming in and out, that this is reassessed, you know?
You mean in the event that it's a different type of office where you may have multiple
traffic.
people have the traffic? Oh.
So, let's see, I'm looking at staff. So-
I would say no, because a variance typically runs with the land, not with the owner. So it's perpetual, so it wouldn't change. I don't know that we can condition it based on an exact business or an exact use, unless someone else wants to speak on that.
Well, I was going to say, it's commercial property, and so it would
Well-
allow multiple different types of
Yes.
uses on this site.
It could be
without-
commercial or go back to residential.
Right. I appreciate the question, let me say that. And again, this is one of those things where absolutely I agree with Morgan. Typically, a variance runs with the land. You know, it doesn't change with property ownership, things of that nature. That aside, you know, you either need to be comfortable enough to say that I think that gravel is acceptable no matter what else goes on here, because to me, this is a change of use. This is the big change of use when you take, you know, like homes that front on a big road and they're homes, and then one day you see the law office there, right? But when they make that conversion from a single-family home to a bona fide commercial activity, you have to improve the property, and you do those things that are required in the code. So I think if you wanted to add a condition that said that it only applied to this use, the worst thing that could happen is that if it's not an appropriate condition, gravel's good forever and ever. So if you don't want to see gravel there forever and ever, I would probably suggest that you know, think a little more intently about whether this is an appropriate variance.
And this is mixed residential and commercial, so was that
This
like-
site.
Yeah, so if it was full commercial and there wasn't residential there, then would gravel still be okay?
Or residential only, yes, I think that would be appropriate. Is that right?
Residential is allowed.
But gravel would be acceptable for
I
residential
don't know
parking?
that duplex could be converted into commercial, but if we approve gravel just outright as a parking and driveway, then yes.
Is your question, if it's stayed residence,
Yeah, I
do
guess
they
my,
have to pay parking in a residence?
well, no, I mean, my question is because if I was living in that house, I would prefer to have gravel below me than asphalt. Because I think it's acoustically nicer when cars pull up, and I don't think that it's hot when you walk out. And so I'm just thinking from a residential point of view, if I was there, but that's just me. And that's what I was trying to kind of clarify, if the gravel is okay, if the whole thing was commercial and not a mixed.
Well, I mean, if the whole thing, both buildings were all commercial, they would still be before you with a variance request to provide gravel parking for additional parking, which would be beyond 6 spaces at that point. It's going to be more because you're converting the other building. I don't know what the number would be, but it would be more. So if I didn't understand your question right, you can re-ask, but.
See that staff does recommend approval of the request?
Staff recommends that you read what the applicant wrote and then look at just the criteria that are present and that are not present, and have that discussion amongst yourselves and see.
Yeah, if you go back to A through G, I think it is, in the report, there are at least 3 of those sections. I think it was C, D, and E, that the staff report does say that, you know, for instance, there's no unnecessary hardship through the application of the ordinance. That was in D. There's no unique circumstance or conditions applicable to the land or buildings. And then in E, the granting of the variance is not necessary for reasonable use of the land. So I would agree with those 3 statements that it does not appear to meet each of A through G.
But then it says staff recommends approval of the variance request.
It does. So my apologies for the somewhat apparent inconsistency there between the A through G and then the final recommendation.
But that approval is
Thinking-
based on what the applicant stated?
The
It
approval.
shouldn't be. The applicant always makes comments, the staff reviews those.
Yes.
And I think upon further review, that if we were sending this out to you today, it would probably have a different recommendation. Okay.
Based on how
Which
we
is-
interpret the definitions and the criteria.
Okay. So what would that recommendation be?
You guys are confused.
Maureen, I think it would be for denial if it didn't meet A through G.
Unless you read the applicant's statements differently, or her responses, or if you have more questions, you can make the motion that you feel is appropriate, but we would have gone back and changed that in hindsight.
Question, for you, sir. Have you parked behind the residence before? Or do you anticipate any problems with that?
I mean, as long as we can get in and out, I don't think it would be an issue.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I commend their desire to use an alternative material that's cottagey and in keeping with the feel that they'd like, a little less commercial, industrial. I agree with what Mary said about the way the way gravel feels and looks, and the heat that it puts off, or lack thereof, as opposed to concrete. So I think I personally don't have a problem with this one, as long as, you know, it's recognized that this particular layout isn't necessarily what the final configuration.
I tend to agree with those statements as well.
Like, I don't have a problem with it, and I want the applicant to get what she wants,
Yeah,
but I also,
it's a
I'm having
pervious surface too, so, you know, it's good for water, you know, runoff.
I'm having a hard time though with the unnecessary hardship. I don't think it's there. I'm gonna read it again, but y'all go ahead.
Is this, can I ask a question? Is it just gravel or asphalt, or are there paver options in the middle or something other, or is it just gravel or asphalt?
They requested gravel when they submitted this, that's why we were talking about gravel.
Okay.
They put that word,
Okay.
gravel.
Gotcha.
Mhm. Yeah. And it is.
So the renters of the
Tongue-in-cheek,
property are the ones,
tongue-in-cheek.
sorry. So the renters of the property are the ones that are gonna be, applying the change, right? Because
Renters of the
Yes.
commercial part.
of the commercial space, yeah. I mean, gravel's way cheaper,
And paying for the
you
improvement.
know, yeah.
I mean,
But
I've
say
seen their work before. It's not like it's gonna be just splayed all over the place and
Yeah.
Mr. Foote, do you have any other input?
I'm happy to answer questions, but I don't have any voluntary comments at this time. Thank you.
Voluntary comment. I make a motion to approve.
There you go.
Was it item?
Yeah,
Yes,
BZ.
okay, BZ 2022-008, for, off-street parking surface requirement to allow gravel parking. A variance to the off-street parking surface requirement to allow gravel parking.
Second that.
Ross Rollins,
Yes.
Kim White. Marty Heffron,
Yes,
Letitia Smith,
Yes.
Mary Boyd.
Yes.
Okay, your variance passed. Congratulations.
I feel your pain.
Yeah. Okay, and then number 4, the applicant has requested to postpone this to our July meeting. I'm gonna make a motion to, well, do we have to have a public hearing on that? Okay. Gonna make a motion to postpone BZ 2022-009 to our July meeting date, soon to be determined.
second,
Second, oh, yes.
Ross Rollins,
Yes.
Kim White,
Yes.
Marty Heffron,
yes.
Letitia Smith,
Yes.
Mary Boyd.
Okay, do we have any other business? Yes, we do. I want to make a motion to move our July 6th meeting to July 13th.
Second.
Ross Rollins,
Yes.
Kim White,
Yes.
Marty Heffron,
Yes.
Letitia Smith,
Yes.
Mary Boyd.
Yes.
Any other business? No? I have no communication. Does staff have communication? Okay, we'll adjourn.